Hi guys, I'm Marcelo Alonso, and from now on I will start to bring you here in Sherdog some old stuff I've covered in Brazil from Vale Tudo times. And today I will recall the debut of 4 American legends that started their path in Brazilian Vale Tudo events. I'm talking about Kevin Henderson, Mark Kerr, Henderson and Chuck Liddell. Instead of staying in comfort zone, waiting for a straight chance in UFC or Pride, these future UFC champions or Hall of Famers decided to challenge themselves fighting the bloody Brazilian Vale Tudo events, sometimes fighting twice or 3 times in the same night with almost no rules. And Kevin Randleman was the first. Coming from a wrestling background, the NCAA champion decided to follow the steps of his mate Mark Coleman. And it's important to note that in that moment, Coleman was the most respected fighter in the world, winning 2 UFC Absolute tournaments in a sequence. Kevin could easily have waited an opportunity in UFC, but he decided to choose the most difficult path, fighting 3 Vale Tudo tournaments in Brazil in 8 months. His victorious debut took place in Rio de Janeiro tournament Universal Vale Tudo 4, where he won 3 opponents via TKO: Brazilian Carlos Maciel, Canadian Geza Coleman and American Dan Bobish. After getting UVF Absolute belt, Randleman challenged some of Jiu-Jitsu fighters to try to take the title from him in the next edition of the event. Of course, Randleman's statement felt like a bomb in Rio de Janeiro martial art community, and 5 months later he returned to Brazil to face some of the very best local representatives in a packed metropolitan arena. His first opponent that night was Ebenezer Fontes Braga, even taking clear advantage against Muay Thai and Luta Livre representative. Kevin got some bruises in a 20 minutes battle, winning by unanimous decision. In the sequence, he got a TKO win over experienced black belt Mário Sucata, reaching the final against Carlos Barreto in a classical Jiu-Jitsu versus Wrestling challenge. More than that, Hammer House versus Carson Gracie. Barreto was also out of his best condition after 2 battles against Geza Coleman and Dan Bobish. The final lasted 22 minutes and ended with Carlos Barreto submitting Randleman with a triangle choke, leaving local crowd absolutely insane. In '99, Randleman finally got a chance in UFC and avenged his friend Coleman twice. First, defeating Maurice Smith in UFC 19, and later robbing the UFC heavyweight belt from Peter Williams in UFC 23. In 2001, Kevin decided to go down to light heavyweight division, where he faced names like Chuck Liddell, Renato Babalu. In Pride, he fought in both divisions, faced some of the biggest legends of the sport like Fedor Emelianenko, Crocop, Shogun Rua, Sakuraba and Quinton Rampage Jackson. On February of 2016, the monster suffered a heart attack and died at the age of 44 years old. Last week, we received the news that Randleman was finally inducted to the Hall of Fame of UFC. A well-deserved homage celebrated by the fans of the great legend of the sport. Another great wrestler that started in Brazilian Vale Tudo was Mark Kerr. Found by Brazilian promoter Frederico Lapenda, the NCAA Division I wrestler made his debut in January of 1997 in the 3rd edition of World Vale Tudo Championship in the fancy Maxud Plaza Hotel in São Paulo. Kerr just needed 5 minutes to pass over Polar Bear Paul Violence and capoeira fighter Mestre Hulk. In the final, he got the Brazilian audience in silence, using his ground and pound game to neutralize the Jiu-Jitsu legend Fábio Gurgel, 27 kilos lighter, winning the tournaments. 6 months after his consecration in Brazil, Kerr would be introduced to American fans in UFC as Máquina de Bater, Smashing Machine, the cover headline of our WVC3 reports in Tatami. Kerr won 2 UFC tournaments in the sequence, 14 and 15, beating 4 opponents in less than 5 minutes, calling the attention of Japanese market. Between 1997 and 2000, the Smashing Machine was undoubtedly the most feared heavyweight in the world. But after the impressive sequence of 4 wins in Pride, his addiction to steroids and painkillers started to affect his physical and mental health, and he lost 11 from 14 fights in a row. As HBO showed in the documentary The Smashing Machine, released on 2003, a film that opened up the eyes of American society for a serious problem. But no doubt, for all he has done on his prime, Kerr also deserves a place in UFC Hall of Fame. Daniel Jeffrey Henderson was the third American who started his career in Brazil. Former member of American national team, Hendo decided to move to NHB, encouraged by colleague Rico Caparelli, who had created Raw Team, Real American Wrestling, inviting Tom Erickson and also Randy Couture. Hendo's debut in Brazil happened in 1997 with a surprising victory in a middleweight tournament where the favorites were Carson Gracie black belt Crésio de Souza and shootbox big star Pelé Landi. Henderson started surprising Carson Gracie's black belt with a heavy ground and pound game in the first fight. After defeating the favorite via TKO, Hendo submitted in the final with a guillotine choke Henderman's brother Eric Smith, who had beaten Pelé Landi in the other side of the brackets. Thanks to the impressive debut in Brazil, Hendo got an invitation to fight in UFC 17, where the former Olympic team member defended USA in the first middleweight tournament of UFC history. Once again, Hendo surprised the favorites Alan Goys and Carlos Newton in 2 15-minute war, getting his only UFC title. After that win, Hendo decided to challenge himself in Japanese market, fighting Rings KOK, where he won 5 fights, beating Brazilians Minotauro Nogueira and Renato Babalu in the final and semi-final, earning a prize of $200,000. In the sequence, Hendo was finally invited to the biggest event in the world, Pride, where he cemented his name among the best of all times, winning 2005 middleweight Grand Prix. In 2011, Hendo beat Fedor Emelianenko, winning the belt of Strikeforce, returning to UFC, where he did his last 11 fights of his career, retiring in 2016. A curious point about Hendo and Brazil is not just the beginning in that sport, but the impressive amount of Brazilians he faced in almost 20 years of career. From his 47 MMA fights, 22 were disputed against Brazilian fighters. He won 14 and lost 8. By the way, he was fairly induced to the UFC Hall of Fame because of his unforgettable 5-round battle against Mauricio Shogun Ruas in UFC 139. Chuck Liddell was another Hall of Famer that started his path in Brazilian Vale Tudo. The different point about the Iceman is that he has made his very first fight in UFC 17, winning Noé Hernandes via decision. Once he was already in the UFC, there was no need to prove his skills in Brazil in the bloody International Vale Tudo Championship. But when promoter Sergio Battarelli invited him in the backstage of UFC to face Pelé Landi, Liddell knew it could be a great opportunity. By that time, Pelé had already 15 fights and 13 wins, being considered among the best middleweight in all rankings. Chuck Liddell and Pelé Landi is definitely among the best fights I saw in all 14 editions of IVC I've covered. They fought a 30 minutes back and forth battle that ended up with Chuck winning via decision. And the victory over Pelé, of course, put Liddell in another level of recognition for UFC promoters. After an impressive sequence of wins over Kevin Handman, Murilo Bustamante, Vitor Belfort and Renato Babalu, the Iceman got his first title shot against Randy Couture. He was knocked out in the 3rd round but didn't lose motivation, and after a sequence of knockouts over Tito Ortiz and Vernon White, he finally got the revenge against the Natural. This time, however, Liddell won via knockout in the 1st round and conquered UFC light heavyweight belt. After defending the title 4 times, the Iceman lost the title for Quinton Rampage Jackson in UFC 71. Chuck Liddell would make more 5 fights until retirement in 2010, when he was induced to the Hall of Fame of the UFC. And that's it. I hope you liked this first MMA Roots. In the next edition, I'm going to recall how important was Master Carson Gracie transforming Vitor Belfort from a Jiu-Jitsu blue belt into a Vale Tudo champion. See you guys in the next video.